Hey, Will with LV Performance. Today we're going to talk about a upgrade that's probably overlooked most of the time. This one is going to be a power steering cooler. Today we'll be working on the Tweaker Z, the 350Z that we have in here every once in a while, trying to keep it on the track or track worthy. Today we're going to be doing an upgraded power steering cooler from Concept Z Performance. We'll be using the 13-row one, which is the upsized one from their standard 10-core one. So you might be wondering why you would need a upgraded power steering cooler. What's the point of going through all that? Well, if you just do regular street driving or just the occasional drag strip stuff, a power steering cooler probably really isn't going to help you out at all. But if you do any type of autocross, rallycross, or especially drifting, it is a big upgrade for you. Some of the things you might notice if you do a lot of hard driving like that, you might start to have dead spots in the steering after a few laps at the track. That can be a little irritating, but also it is harder on the entire steering system of your car. It's harder on the power steering pump, and it's definitely harder on the rack and pinion, which could cause a whole lot of other issues for you. If you're into a lot of track style racing, you already have to go through enough upgrading your car, fixing things that get broken. This is one of those things that can potentially help keep you from having to replace things as often and keep you on the track longer. So also keep you a little bit more consistent. Usually it's some of the smaller tracks, a lot with the tighter curves, that give you a lot of those issues. You'll know after a few laps, start having dead spots in the steering, and that's just not real helpful for you. So we'll show you how to upgrade your steering cooler setup on your 350Z or G35, or if you're working on any other type of car, this could still be helpful for you. Alright, so this is the factory steering cooler on this 350Z. Just a little guy, a little tube and fin one. This little guy is just held on here with two 10mm bolts back there. We already disconnected these two lines going to it, just so they could drain. We already emptied the steering reservoir. With the kit that you get from Concept Z, they want you to eliminate these lines coming through and replace them with the rubber hose all the way through. I actually kind of like these lines the way they are from the factory, especially with their mount. So what I want to try to do is actually just cut these lines and reuse this part where it comes up here to attach to the rubber lines going to our new cooler. So we'll see how that works out. Alright, and pardon the mess, I got pieces from all kinds of projects all over the place here. But this is our steering cooler kit from Concept Z Performance. This is our 13-core or 13-row cooler. This is our factory one off the Z. And this is a little assortment pack of all the parts they give you for it. Very nice. Our bracket, and then some hose and some zip ties. So we already have this one removed from the car. Whoop. And we are going to bolt up the new bracket right there where the old one was. Alright, so we got the cooler mounted on the Z now. Installing the cooler itself is extremely simple. We used the same two bolt holes that were holding on the original real small cooler. Bolted up the bracket to it. Just used, reused the factory 10mm bolts because they got a real large washer on them. So we bolted that down, snugged that up nice and tight. And then mounting the cooler to the bracket, they do give you some small rubber O-rings. We put those one on under each bolt between the cooler and the bracket, and then with their supplied hardware with the nylock nuts, we just cinch those down until it barely starts to squish that rubber O-ring, or rubber washer I should say. That gives it a little bit of vibration protection, so not a whole lot but a little bit. And then they do give you the fittings, the adapter fittings that go in the cooler. Those will thread right in. I usually put a little bit of anti-seize where the O-ring surface will hit. That way that O-ring will not bind up and just want to break. It will just cinch down and seal. And then they give you these two outlet fittings. Depending on how you route your lines, they give you one straight one, 190. I use that 90 obviously on this side to bring it over. And like I said before, we did cut off the factory metal lines to reuse that portion where it goes through the core support here. They give you all the stuff to be able to replace all this and just go on in. I wanted to keep this setup. Personally, I like that better, but that is totally up to you when you install yours. So just cut those off. Did have to grease those a little bit, slide it over what's left of the factory lines. Obviously make sure there's no debris in there from cutting that, so make sure it's all clean so you don't contaminate your new steering cooler. Now we are going to go ahead and fill up our power steering fluid, and then we'll set the cap back on it and start it up and turn it lock to lock a couple times. Try to purge some of the air out of there because it will take quite a bit to fill up that new cooler. And it's usually better to have it, if you're doing this, obviously you probably won't have the car on a lift. It's not necessary to have the car on a lift to do this, but usually it's better if you have the front end of the car jacked up. That way you have the tires up off the ground, so when you're steering it back and forth, it takes some of the stress off of that setup with purging the air out. It goes a little bit easier. You don't have to, but it's just a little bit nicer on it. Alright, so we are all finished with the power steering cooler kit on our 350Z. Got everything filled back up. We did fill this one up, run it lock to lock a few times, let it sit and fill it back up, did it again. You'll have to do that a few times to purge all the air out of the system with it filling up that new cooler. But we got all that done, no leaks, and hopefully this will make it a little bit more consistent at the track and not have that cutout. Well, if there's anything in this video that we did not cover that could be helpful to you, go ahead and leave us a comment and we'll get back to you on it. Overall, doing a steering cooler setup is really simple to do. All you got to do is plumb it in to the return line on your steering system. Most of the time you can even use just a aftermarket transmission cooler. Usually they're just a 3/8 hose size, and which is usually what it is on the return line on just about any power steering system. So happy modding and have fun.